Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. I want to give you guys a quick update going into the weekend. We'll take a look at Bitcoin, a little bit of a weekly recap, and some levels to watch. I'll also take a quick look at the charts for Binance Coin and Ontology. First, let's look at the market cap here. This is the $1 billion plus market cap club here, and you can see for the last 7 days, just kind of taking a look at some of the price action, some of the changes. The biggest winner was VeChain, up 18%, Ontology almost 18% there, Binance Coin 16%, EOS 15%, and then Bitcoin Cash. And then below that, relatively small numbers, single digit gains. You can see Bitcoin for the last week, relatively flat, up 1.9%, and most other names very similar in terms of the action we've seen. Now we know within that 1.9%, there's been a lot of ups and downs, some choppy action, but all around there hasn't been a lot of gains here in the last 2 weeks or so. And you can see here on the total market cap picture here just for the last few days, meandering in and around this lower to mid $300 billion range. We hit a low right around that April 28, 29 at 300, and we've most recently peaked around 350 and just kind of been in this range. And you can see it's starting to get pretty flat here in the last few days. The alt market very similar there, and not a lot of change in the Bitcoin dominance. BTC dominance sitting at 38% here, and it's just kind of been sitting in this little bit of a range, hitting a high of around 39.8 just a couple of days ago. So not a lot of difference there, and we'll see that as we look at the charts here. So I want to talk Bitcoin first, taking a big picture look here. You know, we've been in a transition following the big down leg here that we saw in May, and over the last couple of days, you can see we had this initial run that move off the low here, but you can see how just narrow and tight this is starting to get here over the last few days, and there hasn't been a significant change one way or the other following this first initial move up off the low on May 29th. We've had some quick moves up, quick moves down, but if you take here just the middle price, it's kind of plus or minus 3.5%, 4% each way, with even the most recent days getting very narrow. And so we're still very much in this kind of transition period where, you know, the market's trying to decide, was this May 29th the low? Are we starting to move higher and turn the corner here and make a new trend? Or is this just a bounce and we're going to retest the lows before either moving higher again or taking out this support zone? And so I think there's still a little bit of uncertainty on both sides, and just kind of trying to determine that. We haven't seen strong follow through one way or the other, but I do believe we're going to start to see that here going either into early next week and for sure by next week, just because historically Bitcoin doesn't sit this tight for very long. We tend to have quiet periods for a few days maybe, but then generally we start trending again, or we have a significant move one way or the other. And you can see here the last few days it's been very tight and very narrow. Volatility is low, and so I'm expecting to see that end here by next week. Zooming in a little bit here, looking at the 4-hour chart. This is 4-hour BTC on Coinbase, and with this most recent low, the first thing to look at is just this rising trend line that we've been seeing form here over the last couple of days, but then also this horizontal price resistance, which has been a point of resistance here. You saw it on June 3rd, right around that 77.30 mark. Then we had a pretty good pullback, formed that higher low, which is starting to form this trend line, and then we tested it again here and couldn't break above before pulling back yesterday. So making higher lows, but within this pattern, there's a little bit of an ascending triangle pattern that is forming. Now, normally this is a bullish pattern. It's a bullish continuation pattern from this broader trend. But the fact that the bigger time frames, the 12-hour, the daily, and even the weekly, are still very neutral, it could break either way. So it's very undetermined. There's a couple of ways I'm looking at playing this here. A dip back to this trend line would be a potential entry that I'm going to look at with a stop just below. And then, of course, a breakout would also signal a move higher. Now, the level that we got to hold here near term, if we break below this trend line, the first stop is going to be 75.35, but then this 74.80 is a must hold. And the reason it is because if we break, it's one thing to dip below the trend line and then move higher, but if we break below this, you're going to take out two of the most recent higher low patterns, and that's going to really start to confirm a trend and change where we're starting to make a series of lower highs. And so that's why that 74.80 or so in and around that zone is a must hold. Basically, whatever this low was back in here, we want to see that hold. If it breaks below, it could really start to accelerate to the downside. First level I'm going to be watching is around 73.50, and then ultimately a test of the 7100 range if it continues to move lower. On the upside, if it breaks higher, the target zone that I'm watching is around 79.50 up to around 81.50, this little zone right in here, and I covered that in depth during the live stream yesterday. There's a couple of reasons I'm looking at that target zone. One, its psychological 8K number was also a key pivot point here back in mid-May. There's Fibonacci retracements that line up with around 81.50. There's a technical measured move from this inverted head and shoulders that lines up with this target. And so there's just so many ways there. Ichimoku resistance on the cloud, on the upper end of the cloud is right here. So there's just a lot of different indicators kind of pointing to that zone as a significant resistance level to be watching if prices move higher. So that's going to be what I'm paying attention to if we see this thing break out to the upside. But like I said, this could break out either way. Overall, the market structure is very indeterminate, and this is kind of forming a little bit of a tightening pattern, which will resolve itself here in the coming days. I mean, you can see the apex of this pattern here goes into early next week, but generally it doesn't wait that long. It's going to either break out here one way or the other within the next 2 days or so. Let's take a look at Binance Coin real quick. So this is the BNB USDT pair, and there was a couple of things to watch. Now, this was one of the winners for the week, had a very strong move, especially over the last few days, but then we couldn't break above this resistance on the USD pair around 1745. You can see we formed a little bit of a double top. I had re-entered this trade here and had a relatively tight stop around 1685. That got taken out. You can see once we broke the neckline, just really accelerated down to around 1570, and we're bouncing right now, but until it gets back above that 1650 mark, I'm still just treating this as a little bit of a bounce. If it continues lower, then the lower to mid $15 range, and even as low as $15 even, is going to be the level to be watching for support. Now, best case, this just kind of sits tight here for a little while, builds a new base from which it could continue higher. On the BTC pair, Binance Coin was breaking out into new high territory, and so the momentum is certainly in favor of this one. So I'd like to see this one just kind of consolidate here before moving higher. Of course, at the end of the day, what Bitcoin does here over the next few days will certainly drive this a little bit, as it usually does, and it spills over into the altcoin market. And Ontology, another big winner this week. Now, Ontology has held up relatively well, and you can see here over the last few days just building a very strong uptrend, which is tested here a few times now. And the breakout point, new high territory, is just above. So this chart is also getting very narrow here, very tight, kind of setting up. Could go either way, but the fact that this is next to new highs is favoring the bulls. But I do want to caution, there's a couple of things that I'm watching here. We saw a high here and then a higher high, but you can see the RSI did not confirm. We saw a little bit of a divergence show up there, and so that is signaling that this is losing a little bit of momentum right now. If it just continues to consolidate, then that will negate it. But what I'm watching right now is this lower trend line. If it breaks below that, then the 105 area is going to be the key support area to be watching in the near term. A break below that, then we could see the selling continue, and at that point I'll just be waiting for some of the oscillators to get a little bit more oversold. But for now, gotta go with the favor of the bulls, just because this is a very strong pattern. If you look at the daily chart, still looking very strong here at new closing highs, and so not a lot of overhead resistance if this one decides to break out. And the fact that the RSI has had some time to cool off a little bit also would give it a lot more upper room if it needed to move higher there before getting into overbought territory. So that's definitely one to be watching here over the next few days. Strong name. They have their mainnet going live at the end of June, and so there's some fundamental action driving a lot of this as well. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Just wanted to bring that update on Bitcoin and some of the market action that we've seen here over the last few days. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care, everyone.